What's up, y'all? This is Mo, and today we're going to be taking a look at probably my favorite platform in micro FPV, the 3-inch 1S Toothpick. I like 1S the best, but we'll get into that later. But I also have, for those of you who don't like 1S, a little bit of 2S action. I know it's upside down, I can't really adjust it, but we're going to take a look at that one later. And my whole goal is to hopefully explain to you why you need to build one of these, why you need to experience the magic of this platform, why 1S is so good, and just convince you to, but you got to build one. Please build one. These are both Walksnail, as a way to further entice the community to get on board. You get that crisp HD footage, but don't be fooled. I also have an HD0 build with the Nano V3 cam. I think it's called the Nano V3 cam, and I have an analog build. Those are my fast boys when I want to get after it. But you'll be impressed. You're going to be impressed by what this thing can produce. Stick around for this one because I really like this platform, and it's a build video. I hope y'all enjoy it. Let's take a look at it. Alright, so here we are starting off with the 1S version of the build, my personal favorite, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But we have Niles the Corgi make an appearance in this episode. I hope you enjoy him. Kind of the reason why I chose this. Keep in mind the battery was also a little bit low when we started. We end up getting a flight time. I don't know what's going on there. We end up getting a flight time about 250. It ends in a crash. I usually get over 3 minutes, and these batteries are old. There's many things. Oh man, I can talk about this platform a lot because I really enjoy this platform. It is my favorite micro platform in FPV. I gotta say, if someone said you can only fly one FPV quad for the rest of your FPV life, what would it be? It would be a 3-inch. I don't want to commit to a battery size if I have to only pick one, but if 1S is my favorite of these two builds, and one of the main reasons for that, and one main difference between this and the 2S version, is the sound profile. We have a very low sound profile on 1S, even for bi-blades. Bi-blades are typically a little bit noisier, but it is very quiet, and I like that. I like to not be obtrusive, especially it opens up maybe different flight spots and flight areas that we can enjoy, like a neighborhood or even a park and other crowded areas, and people won't even hear you, especially if you're flying 20, 30 feet off the ground. They won't even know you're there, and it just adds to the experience. We're also ultra lightweight, coming in well under 100 grams all up weight. I think the dry weight here was 50 grams, and we're on an HD build of this. Analog HD0. This can really do everything. It's super versatile. It's windy today, and this thing is eating up the wind. It's just an insane platform, and part of that is it's such a light such a light weight and such a large prop size. You know, the power to weight isn't necessarily, I guess, high, because this thing doesn't have a lot of punch or thrust. It just can manage the weight. You can just throw more and more weight on top of it. I've thrown action cameras on this, like the Peanut, you know, an extra, how many grams is that, 30, 40? I don't know. It can just eat it up. It just eats it up, no matter what. Obviously, it's going to fly better if it's lighter, but it just ends up being highly efficient and super smooth. Man, it's just a great time. And then a little bit of a crash here. The battery recovers, I think, to 3.6, but we usually get over 3 minutes there. Now we're moving on to the 2S version. Now on this version, both the 1S and the 2S are running the Nano V3, which is the more recent nano camera for Walksnail. It comes with the V3 kit, which is like a 500 milliwatt 1S board. I don't know if you're really getting more output power, though. I think Chris Rosser may have tested that, or someone did. We're not getting too much more, if any, in comparison to the original 1S Lite kit, but the biggest benefit is this camera. It's got a native 4.3 sensor, and you know, I mess with upscaling. I had a video on Topaz AI. It's the one that I use, but you know, you can use other programs, and you can upscale this footage. What you saw at the intro to this whole video was upscale footage that I think looks phenomenal. And you know, add that on top of 1S. We were getting that footage off a 1S quad. Like, are you kidding me? So I think the V3 Nano camera is your best bet. But we're actually not using the 1S Lite kit on this build. We're using a full V2 Walksnail kit, like the 1200 milliwatt. Now, I decased that. You know, it comes with the heat sinks or whatever, the black heat sinks. Just remove that. I removed the little silver heat sink on the board itself, and the weight difference is less than a gram between that and the 1S kit, which is nuts. You know, when we move up to 2S, we are now in a more competitive space for these HD systems, because we can add a Vista, we can even add an 03. But the reason why I like Walksnail for the micros, especially the Toothpicks that, you know, just have a solid or single bottom carbon, is it's only one board. You know, we have our AIO and we have our HD VTX. DJI, you know, Vistas and 03 have two boards, and that's not a big deal on a traditional quad setup. You know, we have a top and a bottom plate, you can get sandwiched in there. But for something like this, you're just building up, you're stacking it up, and then you're just gonna your center of gravity is gonna be kind of off. Your boards are gonna be more exposed. You can certainly do it. It might be a little bit of bias on my end, but for the convenience of having a single board, and I think performance that rivals, if not exceeds, a Vista, I think Walksnail is king of the HD systems and micros. I kind of run off on too much of a rant here. The 2S version is louder. That should be kind of apparent. We have more power. We're gonna make those props are gonna be spinning faster. They're gonna make more noise. It's not objectively loud, but compared to the 1S, it is louder. But we do have more performance capabilities. And if you're looking, this is close call right here. I couldn't find a way out of that one. So if you're looking for more performance, you know, if you only have one quad to ever fly in FPV, it's probably going to be 2S, because you just get that little bit more of performance. And I think maybe people will enjoy 2S a little bit more than 1S because of this. I have a soft spot for 1S. I think I might be in the minority there, but having, you know, a 2S quad, 63 grams, I think, dry, with a 1200 milliwatt VTX in there, that's pretty nuts. Came a little bit low there, hit the sticks, ended up getting 3 minutes, 23 seconds, and the battery was in really good shape, so that's over 4 minutes. All right, so one thing I kind of wanted to include in here is a range comparison between the 1S quote-unquote 500 milliwatt board and the 2S 1200 milliwatt board. So took it down to my local park area. We're going to do some penetration and kind of do a little bit of a not a side-by-side, more of a one after the other. All the information there is on the screen. You know, the bit rate, the latency, which I think is not necessarily true. I think it's actually a little bit more than what it's showing. A few people have proved that. Chris Rosser, Joshua Bardwell have done testing that indicated that. But here's all the information regardless. We're going to try to take the same route on both quads. And again, you're looking at DVR, so this is what I'm seeing. One thing it doesn't really capture very well is stutters. You know, I'm watching this back, and I know that I experienced a couple stutters, mainly at that tree a couple seconds ago. I remember seeing stutters that didn't really come through here, but man, this is a 1S. I'm trying to sell y'all a 1S. This is a 1S video transmitter putting out this type of range, and you know, it's lossless. The onboard DVR that you get off this is lossless, so any of this breakup isn't included. That is phenomenal. You know, we have two patches pointed this way, so anything behind ourselves is majority of this flight is behind ourselves. We're operating on two Omnis. You know, dipping down to the bit rate's dipping down a little bit there, but it doesn't really affect our flight all too much. And once you get over the trees and once you get in the air, Walksnail is just rock solid and beautiful and good looking as well. Got to say that. All right, so now we're taking a look at the 2S version, so the 1200 milliwatt. This is the full Walksnail VTX. And, you know, you can line it up if you're interested in comparing them at specific spots. You know, go back to the 1S flight, compare it to the 2S flight. As someone who did this test, I can kind of tell you in my experience and my feeling that the 1200 milliwatt dipped in megabits, dipped in that bit rate, similarly to the 1S in similar spots. It's just to get as bad. So this is a problem spot once we get behind this tree. I remember the 1S, you know, got low. We're also going to get low on the 1200. We're going to see, I think, 3. Dip down to about 3. We didn't get the stutters or as bad of this a stutter as we did on the 1S, but the megabits do dip kind of similarly. So it's either I'm very impressed by the 1S or this is lackluster performance on the 1200. Either way, I guess it's not bad. The 1200 seems to recover and maintain a higher bit rate for longer, and when it gets bad, it doesn't get as bad as the 1S. But for me, when you're comparing, you know, 1S to what is essentially a 6S full-sized VTX that you'd put in a 5-inch quad, you know, I would give the advantage to the 1S. I would expect less out of it, and it doesn't really give us that much less. I don't know. Am I crazy? I don't know. That's at least my experience with this. Being a 1200 milliwatt, we're going to push the range a little bit further. I'm going to take another pass here. I have two patches facing about this way, a little behind us now. So we're just operating off of Omnis here. You know, this is pretty good performance. You know, when I think about a 2S quad and having this type of video feed behind a building, I think that's pretty impressive. Get the beautiful sky in the background, and I'm pushing it again. We're completely behind ourselves, operating off two Omnis. I tried to squeeze down this path. I wasn't really comfortable. It started to blink red on me, and we got stutters. So I was like, just get me out of there. But this is decent. This impressed me. Let's put it that way. I was able to fly fairly comfortably this route, and you know, this is the type of flying you're not probably doing if you're out for a day of flight. You're not going to be flying behind yourself through trees, and it performed well. It really did. Penetration on a Walksnail, got to give it to it over HD0, of course. The flight feel is not as good. You got that latency that's palpable to me, but can't argue with that DVR. All right, so here we're at the desk. Just going to go over a couple of build tips for y'all if you were looking to build these up. Going to go over my builds fairly quickly. Going to try not to drag it out too long because I can talk for a while with these. But we're going to start off here with the 1S build. Just going to go over all the components really quickly. Again, I mean, we saw them in the B-roll, but these are the 1202.5 Happy model motors, 11,400 kV, of 11,500 kV, excuse me. The reason I go with these on the HD 1S setup is because the 13mm motors, you know, are beefy. They make great power, but I actually want to minimize our amp draw and our battery sag on Walksnail because I really want to prevent those brownouts from happening. If I was on HDZ or analog, it would definitely be 13mm. But for Walksnail specifically, I actually like the 1202.5s. Got the Flywoo board here. I have a great luck with Flywoo boards in my time using them. The AIOs are pretty solid. The ELRS link is good. And we have solder pads, which is the most important thing. From jump, you know, we don't have to remove any plugs. We just have some nice size pads there to help us solder up the motors. The frame itself is the Babytooth 2mm carbon frame. They do make 1.5mm. Wouldn't recommend that for HD. Would only recommend that for ultra lightweight analog builds. You're going to lose some durability. You're going to save some weight. But if you have a heavier setup, especially with 13mm motors, you can have some resonance issues, and that frame is kind of vibrating because it is so thin. That's been my experience. So just a heads up there. The XT30. It is, I say, non-negotiable. I think you need an XT30 on 1S, especially on an HD setup, because the battery sag that we experience, it's mainly to prevent battery sag. The battery sag, late battery, pulls a lot of power away from our motors. I can feel the difference in flight performance, late battery versus XT30. I can't feel it as much. And again, we're preventing sag, making sure we prevent those brownouts from happening. But, you can build this up any way you want. I would say stick to 1202.5 or 13mm motors. I have not experimented with 1102s. I know that the T-Motor Feather, I believe, was built up on 1102 motors. Don't know if we have enough power behind those 1102s to spin up a prop of this size. I think we're going to lose a lot of prop control, and our quad is going to fly like crap. I think that's a guesstimation. If you built an ultra lightweight build on 1.5mm, maybe that's something to be experimented with. But I would stay away from those. Stick to 1202.5 or 13mm motors if you can find FPV cycle motors. They are in high demand, I guess. But outside of that, I mean, it's a pretty standard build. We got to make sure our spacing is appropriate. Nothing is touching between our boards, just typical build stuff. I want the TrueRC antenna here, the LHCP, to get some extra range out of the Walksnail 1S, and it definitely does its job. Affix the external ELRS antenna to an arm, and yeah, you have a fun flying 1S quad. The 2S quad is pretty similar. Oh, I also want to go over this mount here. This is done by Jake FPV 3D print. This is a beautiful mount. It weighs the same as a singular rubber band, which is how we usually, or how I used to mount one of these guys. It would go over one arm and the other arm, and the battery would be held underneath it. But this does that job for the same weight. It looks sleeker, and it holds the battery better. So big shout out to Jake for sending me the STL. I'll ask him if I can include it in the description below as well, just in case you all want to download that. He's got one for 1S and 2S, and he's also got an ultra lightweight option here, which is kind of neat. I just liked this one. It kind of keeps it off the ground, nice and symmetrical. But okay, we're moving on to the 2S build. A lot of the same. These are the 13mm FPV cycle motors. They're like liquid gold. I'll start the bidding at $500 per motor. I think Kebab, when I had asked him at the time of recording this video, so on the date, 6 weeks or so from this date is when he anticipates getting a new stock of motors in. So when those come in, if you're looking to build one, definitely stock up on them. I have the race wire here because my wires weren't long enough to reach the board. I hate dealing with race wire, but it's pretty neat. A lot of the same, though. The build is pretty similar. It's still on a 2mm carbon Babytooth frame. This, you can get away with 2mm on 2S, but not 3S. It's too much for this frame. It's going to have similar issues to the 1.5. We get the resonance. It'll be too bendy. Not good, but you can get away with 2mm in my experience. But yeah, 2S is great fun. You have a lot more power behind your moves. You still have good efficiency. You can have the capability of carrying more HD systems. You can put a Vista on here, but when we have Vistas and O3s, it basically add one more board to the stack. So maybe up here, this gets raised, and we're going to look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I don't like that. I'm partial to the Walksnail single board solution for these micros. I think it works great here. But yeah, this is essentially the same thing as the 1S build, just the appropriate 2S motors and 2S capable FC XT30. Obviously, you can also experiment, and I kind of want to try that out. BT 3.0 from Beta FPV could save us a little bit of weight there. Again, you don't really have to be a gram pincher on this platform because of how well it handles the extra weight. But that's about really all I can think of here. these builds aren't too difficult because you don't have to keep the weight ultra low. You know, as long as you're mounting everything with appropriate spacing, as long as you're using an XT30 on 1S, in my opinion, you shouldn't have too many problems. If you have any questions about the builds, please leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them, but definitely build one of these. Seriously, you got to build one. And that about wraps it up here for the best platform in micro FPV, the 3-inch 1S Toothpick. Just a quick summary here for those of you who skipped around. If you're looking to build one of these, though, hop on over to the desk portion because I go over some configurations that I can't really touch upon here. But just a couple of quick things. One, if you're building up a 1S version, use an XT30. The only reason I recommend that, at least for the HD builds, is that it reduces our battery sag pretty significantly unless your weight is very, very low. If you're on analog and HDZ and you have a 2.8 voltage cutoff for brownouts of the VTX, you could probably get away with it. I know you don't want to buy a heap of XT30 1S batteries. I understand that. But if you're doing Walksnail, and I think in general, this is the right choice. It reduces battery sag. It prevents maybe premature brownouts for our HD system. And it's been my experience that it just performs better. We have more power later into the battery. So that's just something kind of important to note that may not be apparent because XT30 on 1S, it kind of does work. Kebab was right. Can't doubt Kebab. But what makes this platform so special and why I think everyone should have at least one of them is because of the versatility. You can do so many different things with this quad. We have this one built up on Walksnail, more of an exploratory or, have some HD footage to come back to. We get some decent range as well, and it's quiet, stealth quad, which is awesome. You can build it up with analog, have ultra lightweight experience, the lightest you're going to get. It becomes really quick. The performance starts to improve dramatically once you get under a certain weight, once you get into around 40 grams or maybe even lower. It gets pretty nuts. You can also use HDZ, do some racing, have some backyard racing, get some full throttle. You can always be pinning it, which is also what's fun about this quad. You can race in your backyard, be cranking, hammering the sticks, and we're not going that fast. It's quiet, it's not dangerous. It can just do so many things. And, this platform isn't ultra powerful, especially on 1S. You're not going to have ultra fast punch outs, but you have this type of movement, this conservation of momentum that really fits my flight style or how I enjoy flying. It's just a really relaxing experience. It captures the essence of micro FPV to me. You can take it to the park and not bother a soul. It won't even be able to hear you. You can just be cruising around, exploring, just having a good old time with the micro quad. Everyone should have at least one of these. But yeah, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. If you like these build videos, please let me know that as well in the comments below. I know I polled y'all a while back and you wanted to see more custom builds, so more than happy to do that. I got some whoops that I want to go over. I like making these custom builds. I have one other custom quad coming soon that's pretty darn sweet, but I also like doing the bind and fly reviews sometimes as well. Let me know, I guess, what you want to see. More than happy to do it. I just like flying. I like making the videos. And yeah, it's been Mo. Thank you very much for watching. Build one of these 1S micro FPV 3-inch Toothpick Quad Revolution. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you later.